When 19 countries, 35,000 troops and tens of billions of dollars worth of ships and aircraft assembled in Australian waters, no one would have expected that the real protagonist of this military feast would be an uninvited Chinese warship. The electronic surveillance ship, code-named 815A, was like a ghost on a chessboard, anchored silently for 96 hours on the outskirts of the turbulent exercise area, capturing all of the West's most advanced military secrets. The script for the maneuvers was intended to be a direct reference to the conflict in the Taiwan Strait, simulating a scenario in which U.S. forces would be routed to Australia to regroup under the PLA's offensive. But when Australian patrol planes spotted the Chinese Navy's Uranus electronic surveillance ship 80 nautical miles off Darwin Harbour, the well-planned military feast took a turn for the worse. Escorted by the 052D destroyer Guilin, the 6,000-ton electronic beast quietly cut into the exercise area, with 48 sets of new butterfly antenna arrays on the hull like open electronic tentacles, waiting for the most advanced electromagnetic signals from the coalition forces. This is the type of reconnaissance ship for the fifth consecutive visit. Body armor saber exercises, from the first debut in 2017, triggered an uproar. To the Australian side is now reluctantly called a routine phenomenon. Behind the refraction is the field of electronic warfare offense and defense conversion. Exercise command alarms frequently. British aircraft carrier catapulted carrier aircraft, Sea Viper, radar pulse characteristics were fully recorded. Japan's eyes, testing a new air defense system worth $1.2 billion. Fire control radar parameters were captured throughout. Norway F-35 Norwegian F-35 fighter jet lifted off. Its encrypted communication channel was cracked by the quantum receiver. U.S. Pacific Command internal communications records show that the first day of the exercise, the fleet was forced to urgently activate the encryption of frequency hopping system. This is the ultimate means of secrecy that is only activated during wartime. When Japan's eyes test new radar, the 815's broadband receiver array recorded the radar from power on warm-up to full power operation of the 138-second pulse characteristics of these data back in real time, generating the corresponding interference spectrum template, so that this type of costly research and development of radar may be instantly reduced to the future of the blind. In the face of this uninvited guest, the participating countries are caught in an unprecedented dilemma. The U.S. military emergency electronic silence, the cancellation of live fire subjects, the F-35 takeoff and landing training compressed to a minimum. France's Aquitaine frigate even turned off the radar and switched to binoculars to observe, staged in the modern naval battle, self-defeating, embarrassing scene. More anxiety for the coalition forces is the time difference. The traditional intelligence process requires months of analysis to form tactical solutions, but 815 equipped with the Skydome system to achieve the battlefield instant solution. July the 12th, the U.S. Army F-35C fleet of ultra-low altitude breakout drill. On July the 12th, a formation of U.S. F-35C carrier aircraft conducted an ultra-low altitude surprise defense drill, in which the frequency hopping pattern of the aircraft's data chain was cracked within 3 hours, and the PLA's anti-stealth radar array adjusted its detection parameters later that evening. The aircraft carrier HMS Prince of Wales, which had just completed a £250 million upgrade of its electronic systems, was exposed to key data fluctuations when switching between the old and new systems in front of a Chinese reconnaissance ship. The U.S. military had to deploy Arleigh Burke-class destroyers for close protection, as with the Aegis ship as a human signal blocker. The last 3 days of the exercise, the U.S. military to make every effort, EA-18G, Growler, electronic fighter aircraft took turns to rise in the airspace around the 815 sprinkled with jamming foils and electromagnetic barriers. However, 4 sets of old-fashioned Yagi antennas were raised at the rear of the reconnaissance ship, and through the attenuation pattern of the received jamming signals, the power limit parameters of the U.S. jammers were deduced in reverse. The U.S. technical officer on the scene angrily dropped his headphones. They even collect jamming waves as educational material. The real brilliance of this electronic surveillance ship lies in transforming a military confrontation into a double game of law and psychology. When the Australian side protested, citing the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Chinese side showed a precise chart of the ship's trajectory. The ship had consistently stayed in the international shipping lanes 12 nautical miles out of the territorial sea, and 27.6 nautical miles from the Australian coastline at its closest point. The Pentagon's strategic researcher privately admitted, It's like they're using a scalpel to cut open legal crevices, and we don't even have a grip to protest. According to the international law of the sea, the principle of freedom of navigation on the high seas allows the 19-nation coalition forces to organize a task force to monitor the non-executive but most present ship around the clock, and the psychological level of suppression is even more deadly. Carrier formation saturation attack test scheduled for July the 15th was cancelled. The British carrier captain complained to the media, "It's like a boxing opponent with a video camera. Every move you make is analyzed in slow motion." The US military had to use expensive MQ-25 drones to conduct electromagnetic decoys, costing $830,000 for a single mission, but interrupting the 815's monitoring for only 17 minutes. This blunt tactic has become a deadly kill when the coalition spent 9 months to deploy troops around the world. The Chinese reconnaissance ship has been close to record its tactical loopholes when the coalition simulated the sinking of the Liaoning ship. When the Allies simulate sinking the Liaoning, the PLA's anti-ship missile targets are locking onto its fuel supply ship. This gray ship is weaving China's intelligence network around the world. In May this year, the same type of ship appeared near the port of Hambantota, Sri Lanka, ostensibly monitoring the routes of merchant ships, but actually mapping the undersea topography. Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force intelligence officers keenly found that the region's hydrographic data and China's assistance in the construction of the port's design highly consistent. 815 is weaving a battlefield transparency network covering the 21st century maritime Silk Road. At the end of the exercise, the Uranus suddenly turned southeast and plunged into the Kermadec Trench between New Zealand and Fiji to establish a chain of acoustic coordinates in the depths of the Pacific Ocean. The ship's recently upgraded acoustic database has included 180 categories of ship noise characteristics. Even the sound of propeller vacuole bursting are classified and labeled. Any future U.S. submarine passing through the waters, its propeller noise will be instantly recognized and classified. The deterrent power of the 815 is demonstrated in its cost effectiveness. The budget for building one 815 is equivalent to only 2 Tomahawk missiles, but it forced the 19-nation coalition to spend an additional $470 million to urgently upgrade its electronic warfare systems. This asymmetric game confirms the core law of modern warfare. The weight of information has exceeded the equivalent of firepower. Silent listener's laptop is more lethal than a missile silo. When it intercepted the U.S. military, Standard 6 missile guidance signals immediately triggered the Star Chain, space-based synergy mechanism, 3 over-the-top satellite to adjust the orbit to focus on the signal source, radio telescope arrays in the mountains of Yunnan, synchronized to start the cross-validation. This heaven and earth is one. Sensing network is to crack the U.S. military distributed combat core key. In the Kermadec Trench after the exercise, the 815 electronic reconnaissance ship is quietly suspended in the deep Pacific Ocean. Its hydrophone array hangs down into the 4,000-meter deep sea, continuing to collect undersea acoustic features. In a certain area of the Indian Ocean, a cargo ship is quietly switching communication channels. The crew does not know that they have just avoided the fishing boat mast. Miniature phased array radar has been a complete record of the trajectory of the French nuclear submarine. These data will be converged into the database called Oceanic Electromagnetic File, where the electronic fingerprints of 43 U.S. military bases around the world have been stored, becoming a digital key to break the data chain and implement electronic suppression on the future battlefield. On the electromagnetic battlefield in the Western Pacific, those gray ships have become the scalpel to penetrate the U.S. military information barriers. When the B-2 bombers of Andersen Air Force Base in Guam skimmed the old runway built during World War II, they would not have thought that every electronic pulse they sent out had been recorded in a rotating spherical radome 1,200 nautical miles away. This war without smoke, the real winner will always hide in the shadow of the electromagnetic wave. The war has not yet started. Victory or defeat has been determined, which may be exactly 815 electronic reconnaissance ship to the modern war to write a new note.